Greetings, friends. Kambria Evans here with Zero Disturbance. It is so great to be back on the podcast with you. We have started our new series called Dumb Things Therapists Say. And this is based on all the dumb things I used to say as a therapist. It's just based on the fact that as therapists, we are always learning and you don't know what you don't know. So it's been a blast to think about what is most important for clients and therapists to understand from this series so that they can have a more empowered, clear, productive experience in the therapeutic process. We're also excited to announce that we have launched the client workbook. I've been working on this, y'all, for like 10 years. It's informed by the 10,000 sessions I've done here in my office in California with my EMDR and Brainspotting clients. It's informed by my own therapy as a client in EMDR and Brainspotting regularly. And it's informed by all of the case consultations I've been doing for the last 7 years with other EMDR clinicians. So I'm so excited to bring this to you. There'll be a link below if you're curious about it. And therapists, if you'd like to offer this in your practice for all of your clients, there is a licensing agreement that you can go ahead and join with the Zero Disturbance community, and we'll support you in doing great work with all the people that you serve. Okay, so therapists will make a distinction that is so bizarre to me, and I want to share it with you, and I want to dissect it because there's something really important here we don't want to keep replicating. Kind of sounds like this. I'll have therapists say to me things like this: well, I don't want to go into coaching my client. I'm supposed to focus on the trauma. I'm supposed to focus on the mental illness, on the mental disorder. And then, when the client's better and they're doing okay, and we've resolved their PTSD or we've resolved their anxiety, we've resolved their depression, then they can go work with a coach. But I don't do coaching. And also, I think that, a lot of coaches are just kind of ridiculous. Like, these are literally things therapists have said to me. And here's why I want to say that's dumb. This is so dumb. And I'm hoping to convince you at the end about why I think this is dumb. This idea that as therapists, we're supposed to graduate our clients or send them off to coaches when they're, quote, better is a little bit nonsensical, because there is a distinction, right? When a client's ready to graduate because they feel like they have what they need and they feel complete and they have some neutrality. Yes, do not keep people in therapy forever. That is so codependent. However, there are so many things that therapists know how to do, especially EMDR therapists, that actually allow your clients to expand the positive pieces and code variables inside of them. We talked last episode about programming, right? We've all been programmed in our bodies and our body sensations with negative and positive beliefs of self and the world. We've been programmed forever. And oftentimes we have what I call incongruent programming. And what this means is that there is one program running, one software running in our hardware, and another one as well. And oftentimes we get glitches in our system because these programs kind of bump up against each other and don't know how to function. Which one's the real, true program? What's the real code I'm supposed to take in? It's very disorienting. And very rarely in therapy, in my experience, have I seen someone come in with all negative code, with all, I'm using air quotes here, mental illness, mental disorder. Like, those people, those really, really severely coded, negatively coded individuals are more rare in private practice, okay? Most often what comes in are people that have two programs running and don't realize they have two programs running, right? One is what we can call negative or disturbing. And the other one, it's actually, there's some positivity in there. There's some resources in there. There's some positive sense of self, mental health in there, okay? And so the pure fact that we have, all of us really, typically have two programs running at one time kind of makes what therapists are saying about coaches kind of silly, right? Because as a therapist, you are always working with two programs. And I'm going to use these labels and I hate them, but just for simplicity here, the part that is mentally healthy and the part that we're in the therapy world calling mentally ill or mentally disordered. Again, if you watched the episode last week, y'all know that I don't like this language, but I'm using it because I think it helps people understand what I'm trying to say. Okay. Another reason why I think this distinction between what therapists do versus what coaches do is kind of silly and also just confusing for people who need support. There's a couple of reasons, and I'm going to use EMDR and Brainspotting as examples of why this doesn't make any sense. So in EMDR, there's 8 phases. And when someone comes in to work with me, right, phase 1 has begun. Phase 1 has begun. What is phase 1? It's history and assessment. Now, I typically get a lot of people coming in and telling me all the negative programming, all the negative coding, right? Do you want me to write a timeline? Right. So it's like a data dump. It's like, let me show you this negative program that's running. Okay. Now, when I was first starting out as an EMDR clinician almost 10 years ago, I was like so hyper-focused on this negative, traumatic, disturbing coding. I would just like immerse myself in it. Like, let me understand it, right? Let me understand all the body sensations and emotions and images and all the memories. Like, let's just hyper-focus on this. And what I've learned over the years is that those things typically are presented fairly quickly in the therapeutic process. There's a reason why someone's coming to hang out with you, right? What's really interesting for me now is to track from the beginning positive beliefs, positive cognitions. Why do I keep referring to those things? Well, in the EMDR world, and part of our protocol is we actually have a worksheet we're given in basic training. It has a list of all the negative beliefs and all the positive beliefs. When you set up an EMDR target, you literally say to them, what's the disturbing thing you want to desensitize? What's the negative belief that makes that disturbing now, right? I don't have control. Beautiful. When we finish this target, when you are done, what is the positive belief you want instead? I do have control. I have control now. Wonderful. Okay, so literally our job as EMDR clinicians in phase 4 when we process trauma is to take someone from a negative belief, I don't have control, right? I'm not safe. I'm not lovable. And move them over to this positive belief. And the way they know that they're there is that their body will feel at minimum neutral. Sometimes it just actually feels kind of awesome and expansive, and it's really cool to watch, okay? So as an EMDR clinician, we are trained from the beginning to understand that we are going to be working with 2 sets of programming. It is literally how we work. Okay, phase 1, coming in with the negative history here, the disturbing material. And what I'm doing is tracking positive resources because phase 2 of EMDR, before we process anything disturbing, anything traumatic, before we even set up a target in phase 3, phase 2 is resourcing and stabilization. What does that mean? It literally means that we go look under the hood with the client and say, okay, what do we got here that we can work with that is positive? Because we want both of us to understand that when we go into phase 4 to process this disturbing thing that happened or things, when we move from a negative belief to a positive belief, okay, and not even like a thought, but just in your body, the way it's stored, right? You can feel when your chest is really tight versus relaxed and expansive, right? In phase 2, let's think about what here can help you state change yourself. Meaning, if you feel anxious, if you feel unsafe, if you feel disturbed because you are in a traumatic memory network and your whole body's feeling it. Maybe you're in a flashback, which is like the most extreme memory network re-experiencing, or a panic attack, right? Typically, you're in a memory network that is highly, highly charged and disturbed. Okay, how do we state change you into neutrality, into being calm. Because here's what's true. Your body and your mind, they are like a library full of moments. And very, very rarely has someone had all these moments in their life without having coded or programmed something positive that can be used as a resource. And so our job as EMDR clinicians is to make sure that we identify at least 3 resources to ensure that this person is a resourced person and can go into phase 4 trauma processing with a container around them, right? It's just like when I go in my car before I drive home from the office, I want to know, do I have a seatbelt? Do I have an airbag that's working, right? Because if I'm in phase 4 processing trauma and shit goes down, I want to have some things that are going to pad me and help me stay safe if things get really, really hard, right? But when you think about resources, it might even be like, if I go in my car, like, and I have a long drive, do I have snacks that I love? Oh, man, I hope I have Cool Ranch Doritos. Or, oh, you know what? I want to make sure that I have the cord that connects my phone so I can listen to my favorite music because it makes me feel so good. And I'm going to roll the windows down because I love the wind in my hair and on my face. Oh, it's so lovely. These are resources. Okay? So phase 2 resources, and if y'all are curious about your own phase 2 resources, I would invite you to do one of 2 things. Get the client workbook. We cover all of this and help you identify everything. Or you can opt in as a client for Zero Disturbance and join our community there and get the client resource library for free, okay? So resourcing, a couple examples. Think of a memory you've had in your entire life where you felt like a positive belief of self. Find one. Okay, when I used to play field hockey, I felt very powerful. I felt strong, right? I am powerful, I am strong. Totally attached to field hockey. And y'all, I played field hockey literally 30 years ago. Okay, I was center forward. I got to charge on the field. It was just so enlivening. You can pull up memory networks. It doesn't matter how old they are because your brain doesn't care what time it is, right? You can pull up memory networks and you can get resourced, okay? You can have your body feel and relive that positive experience, just like your body can feel the negative ones when something disturbing gets activated or triggered inside of you, right? We have positive and negative triggers. Other resources might include just places you've been or people that you've been with that help you feel calm or loved or protected, or Laurel Parnell's figures. She has protective figures, wise figures, nurturing figures, right? We have real life resources. Okay, a lot of us will use our animals as resources when we do EMDR. So this idea, again, that therapists think that, I work with this and coaches work with this, I'm trying to convince you guys that, if you are a brain-based therapist, like EMDR, Brainspotting, you already know that there's 2 programs running. There's incongruent programming running all the time. You already know that we have to resource people to some extent. We have to make sure we have a resourced person in order to go towards really disturbing material, right? I love Brainspotting so much. It's like EMDR times a million in terms of just like the subcortical processing that happens in your body. You oftentimes don't even have a sense of time or like images the way you do with EMDR. It just kind of is happening and you're just feeling things. But what I love in Brainspotting is that there's, and I thought this was silly when I did the training. I tried it on myself. It's true. You actually can look in this line of sight and you can find a trauma spot that has a disturbance. And also your eyes can find a resource spot. How cool is this? Where you look, right, impacts how you feel. How cool is that? Right? So in EMDR, we have all these figures and images and memories. We're like tapping into all these neural networks. We're tapping into imagination. Brainspotting, it's like find a resource spot. Where do your eyes want to look that feels good? It's incredible. But we are working with resources all the time before we go into any hardcore trauma. Okay? As I'm talking about this, I think what makes me feel pretty sad for clients and therapists is that this arbitrary distinction between mental health and mental illness really, I think, was a framework that might have been helpful at one point, before maybe we knew about neuroscience. But really the utility of it, I think now, it really is for insurance companies, right? You can't get reimbursed by a coach. You can get reimbursed by a therapist, but you can only get reimbursed by a therapist if there is a DSM diagnosis that something is wrong with you, right? And then when nothing's wrong with you anymore, you're done. And insurance isn't going to pay for that. And I have this fantasy that maybe one day people will be able to continue to work with their therapists after they've resolved disturbing material in order to expand the resources that they have built and created, in order to expand the disturbing materials neutrality into even more positive body sensations, positive cognitions. And the way that we can see this is kind of the second example I want to talk about, is in Brainspotting. Brainspotting and EMDR both do something called performance enhancement. And what this means is that we have the ability with these modalities to actually take your mind into the future template of time, meaning we have the past, what's happened before, typically where trauma is stored. We have the present, which is typically the safe and present time. And then we have the future. Now, what's so cool about the future, you guys, is that the future hasn't happened yet, but our brains already have memories imagining the future. Does that make sense? So like when you plan a vacation, you have an idea of how the vacation is going to be. Like you're looking at the hotels and the beaches and you're like, oh, and you have all these ideas in your mind. And it kind of creates this thread of excitement to the vacation, which, by the way, doesn't even exist the way you're thinking about it. Right? But you have memories now of a vacation that hasn't yet happened. Okay, so the same concept we use in performance enhancement, meaning if I have a CEO come in here and they're like, I have a huge talk for my startup and I'm feeling unsure or nervous about it, right? We use the future template of time to understand what are the memories that have been stored about this talk based on what has happened in the past, what evidence you have that's creating this future story, right? And we use EMDR, we use bilateral stimulation or Brainspotting as well to literally reprogram the brain's story about the future. What? How cool is that? How cool is that? And could you imagine like people being able to do that who don't have to be stamped on their foreheads for insurance companies as mentally disordered or mentally ill or mentally not healthy? You want to get ready for your talk? Sorry, go work with a coach. What is that? Therapists are so highly trained to understand these two programs exist all the time, right? Which one is stronger? Which one comes in more often? How were they coded? These are fascinating questions. I love, love, love understanding how someone has been programmed and coded. It is so satisfying for me to help someone see this and to de-link it and reprogram it the way they want it to be, right? I'll give you another example of performance enhancement. Adajong, who's out of the Netherlands, he and Susie Matheson are brilliant, and he has this technique in EMDR called flash forward. What is flash forward? It's literally a protocol, and I'm going to summarize it, where you use the future template of time, which is memories that have not happened yet but have been imagined, okay? And you can literally de-link anxiety about the future. Meaning, if someone has a flying phobia, but they have no flying trauma in the past, they can use flash forward. Now, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. Oftentimes what happens with this protocol is that the thing people are nervous about is actually just kind of like a metaphorical representation of a dynamic from childhood. Meaning a lot of my clients who have flying phobias, it's not actually the plane, it's the feeling of I'm trapped, I don't have control, I'm not safe. And then the panic comes in, right? Which is oftentimes linked to something disturbing from childhood, maybe the way their family felt, okay? Or maybe the way school felt. But all these templates, all the future template, the present template, the past template, they're all mixed together in your brain because your brain doesn't care what time it is. Your brain isn't like, oh, hold on, body. Don't get nervous about that because that was then and not now. Our bodies don't do that. The programming comes in, okay? So I'm hoping that you're listening to this and understanding that it's important as therapists that we understand that our job is to notice the programming that is disturbing, traumatic, and also the one that's like resourced and wants to be expanded because they're connected to each other, right? When we desensitize the negative beliefs or the traumatic curriculum that has been learned or coded or programmed, it's not just neutral. Like, it's not just neutralized. We actually have in the EMDR target a positive belief. And when you put that positive belief together with the target image at the end, which is so satisfying, and you put those together and you notice how the body either feels neutral and oftentimes feels positive. Y'all, is that coaching? I don't know, but we just expanded something positive for somebody. I love that. Phase 2 resourcing, we're expanding positive resources. Okay? All right. I want to talk about another kind of coding that I think is really important for people to understand. And I'm going to talk about this in future episodes. And I think people get this wrong. So I want to talk about this. And it's a great example of why therapists should understand that programming does exist. So when people come in and they've had any kind of abuse, but especially abuse from a narcissist is a term in the DSM. I call them monsters. I'm going to explain why. Typically, that person's coming in is very disoriented, very confused. And the reason they're coming in that way is because they have been surviving and living in 2 programs. There are 2 programs coming from this monster, right? One program is, I'm safe, I'm wonderful, I'm smart, I'm loving, I'm trustworthy. And the other one is, I'm abusive, I'm scary, I'm unsafe, I won't protect you, right? So we have these competing programs about who this person is in this person's relationship. And then what this monster knows how to do also is they throw in a third program, like icing on a cake, on an evil cake. And that is the programming they try to give someone of, you are bad. You are, and it's negative, 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 not smart enough, not pretty enough, right? So the narcissist, or the monster as I call them, actually is a very sophisticated coder. They get credit for that because the level of manipulation is so tricky. It's so tricky, right? And so I think when people come in to work on this with me, they are confused about these 2 versions of this person. And even if the good side of the monster showed up most of the time, there was a hypervigilance that the scary monster would show up again, even if they only showed up once a month, right? So it's not about frequency. It's just about the fact that there's 2 versions. Now, what I think people and therapists need to understand is that this whole concept of a trauma bond that somehow gives the victim of abuse some level of responsibility in being brainwashed in this programming. This phrase, I don't love this phrase. I don't love this phrase at all, because I think what people need to understand is that actually the default code for monsters, the bottom level foundation scaffolding for monsters is very, very, very negative and borderline evil, right? And then what they overlay on top of that code is a program of like extreme loveliness, extreme success. I once had a lawyer tell me that narcissists are LA rich, meaning that they look very successful and rich, but really they're probably in like tons of debt. So there's just this incongruence. So I think what's so interesting, again, is that when we think about programming, right, I oftentimes like to ask myself, what is the programming? Is there a default programming? With narcissists and monsters, 100% there is. Anyone with like an access to personality disorder, there's typically a very strong default code, right? But for most of us who have like empathy, like brains that can hold 2 ideas at once and are okay making mistakes and not being perfect, we also have incongruent programming or curriculum running, right? So it's so fascinating to help people understand which programming is stronger, which one is more frequent, what activates each one, right? And then once someone figures that out, they get to feel so powerful in their own healing. They get to feel so masterful in deciding what they want to desensitize and then what they want to expand, right? It is such a disservice that coaches cannot be trained in EMDR. You have to be a therapist. I love that Brainspotting allows anyone to get trained in this modality. Coaches, body workers, addiction counselors, right? It is not limiting people from understanding the power of having a resource spot and a trauma spot and being able to titrate back and forth between the two, right? Because we shouldn't have to send people off to coaches just because the insurance companies want us to stamp them with, well, your PTSD as defined by the DSM is now resolved. Or, you're not having panic attacks anymore. You have a little bit of anxiety, but you know what? Just live with it and just figure out how to do some coping strategies with your coach. So I'm hoping that I can help therapists and clients feel more empowered to be with one person they trust longitudinally through not just desensitizing traumatic curriculum or material, but also as they move towards more positive programming and positive curriculum, positive beliefs of self, more positive or neutral body sensations, that they don't have to end the relationship and go start back again with a coach who isn't a therapist, is not trained in all of the things that we are trained in for, I don't know, how long did I go to school for? 1,000,000 years. I think in California, you have to get 3,000 hours before they license you. It's an intense training, right? That's not the same training for coaches. So I want to invite everyone to think about that. When you have your clients in your practice and you've resolved certain things, right? Or maybe you're in therapy and they're talking about finishing or completing or graduating, I want you to Google performance enhancement. I want you to look it up. I want you to understand from this podcast series, we'll talk about this further, how do we expand positive resources? This is something that EMDR clinicians can do, something that Brainspotting therapists can do, something I hope all therapists will internalize, right, as part of their job, as part of a service they should and can offer because they're so highly trained, okay? That was a lot. But I trust that we can think about these concepts together because they're so important. So y'all know that I love having a really rich, satisfying clinical discussion with you. And I will look forward to next time when we are back together. And until then, be well.